Hi, I'm Dr. Peter Amerman, and I'm the author of the book, The Integrated Leader. You can find this book on Amazon.com. You can also find it at my website, drpeteramerman.com. So what I want to talk to you about in this session is really my experience, some of my experience in ministry. I've been 44 years in ministry. I've also had 12 years in higher education as not only a professor, but department chair of biblical studies at Pillar College in Newark, New Jersey. I also spent 2 years as headmaster at American Christian School. And so in higher education, I read a very influential book by a man named George Marsden. The book was called The Soul of the American University. Even with some of the things we see happening today about university, I think the key question we need to ask is, what is the soul of the American university? In the area of higher education, many have become concerned about the fact that it seems to lack a sort of a unifying center, a unifying whole. Even the term university. University comes from Latin terms universitas, which literally means turned around one. We're turned around, it's like the hub of the wheel. What is the center of the wheel? That everything turns around. And a university had a unified view, and which meant that it was turned around the unifying principle, especially the gospel of Jesus Christ. Many of our universities were begun as mission training centers, training people on how to share the gospel of Jesus Christ. And now that seems to have been changed. Archimedes was a great ancient mathematician, and he said this: if you give me a fastened point and a lever long enough, I will move the world. So for the Christian, for the leader, the integrated leader, especially the question is, what is my fastened point? What is the one thing that my whole life turns around? What is the one thing as a professor at a college, Mark School, is turned around? And so in the Christian college university, the firm place to stand has always been a biblical Christian worldview. And so from that fasten point, the educator can present an education, can communicate a gospel that will move the world. It will literally change the world. And that is integrated thinking. You know, ancient Greek education, as I studied a little bit of classical Christian education as well, Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, classical education doesn't just mean reading the classics or reading classical philosophy or understanding that there was a classical model. And the model of classical education was virtue. It was leading to virtue. It was leading to changed lives, lives that had purpose and meaning. Well, in the early 1900s, John Dewey, who had a very different philosophy from a rationalist or a naturalist worldview, was the professor at Columbia University, considered the father of modern education. And so he brought a sort of a secularized approach. I've read some of John Dewey, and it's pretty fascinating stuff. What he said was, what you need to do is focus more on the experience, the experiential part of education, but it lacked a spiritual connection. And so colleges and universities followed that model. As he was the father of modern education, we lost some of what was in the classical education. And so it led to what's called a terminal thinking. Terminal thinking lacks a unifying center. It's fragmented, it's secularized, and it's compartmentalized in education, and it leads to compartmentalization in every area of life. And that's the type of thinking that we see going on around us in culture. Well, when you lack and you're devoid of spiritual connection and meaning and universals, it results in what may be known in the higher education as multiversities, right? You have your different schools. And so the term multiversity was first coined in 1957 by Arthur Besker, who was a U.S. historian, and it described the modern, large and complex university with many schools, with many compartments and extensions and so on, but it also implied a fragmentation and compartmentalization of education into separate compartments, and it lacked a unifying center. Realizing that from my role in higher education, realizing the effect that it's had on a generation of people who are looking at education saying, yeah, okay, it's training me for a career, but what is the center? What is it all meaning of? What is the importance and the meaning for all of that? And so as a result of lacking this unifying center is that you have different schools. You have school of business, you have a school of science, you have a school of literature, and it's also seen as, school is seen as career development, not character formation. But the big question that is lacking in higher education I've seen is without that unifying center, we miss the importance of the one biggest question students are asking: who am I? And until I see myself as a child of God, until I see myself as an image bearer of God, as a steward of God's good gifts, until I see that, I'm going to answer it with something lesser. I'm a doctor. I'm a lawyer. I'm a businessman, a plumber, an athlete, a truck driver. That's not enough. Identity is not found in career. It's not found in accomplishments. It's not found in any of those things. They are lesser goals. It is found in understanding who God says you are.